Clara May Whitmore pressed her palm against the frozen wagon boards until her skin burned. She did not scream when her uncle signed the paper. She did not beg when the stranger counted out $40 like she was livestock at auction. She simply watched the snow fall and wondered if a person could freeze from the inside out. 18 years old. $40. Sold. If you want to hear how one woman turned her darkest moment into the greatest love story the Wyoming frontier ever witnessed, subscribe now and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far Clara's story travels. Clara May Whitmore did not cry when the wagon pulled away from Thornton's General Store. She did not cry when her uncle waved goodbye with the same hand that had just pocketed $40. She did not cry when the man beside her, this stranger who had bought her like a sack of flour, turned the horses north into a wall of falling snow. But when the wind cut through her thin shawl and she realized no one in the world would come looking for her, something inside her chest cracked open. Wyoming Territory, November 1878. The kind of cold that didn't just bite, it devoured. "You got a warmer coat?" His voice startled her, low, rough, like boots on gravel. "No." Figured. He reached behind the seat and pulled out a wool blanket. "Take it." "I'm fine." "You're shaking." "I said I'm fine." He made a sound, half grunt, half sigh, and dropped the blanket between them. "Suit yourself. It's 6 hours to the ranch. Freeze if you want." Clara pressed her lips together and stared at the back of the horses. 6 hours. 6 hours with a man whose name she barely knew, heading toward a life she hadn't chosen. Josiah Brennan, 36 years old, widower, 3 children. That was all her uncle had told her before shoving her toward the wagon. "He needs a wife," Uncle Bernard had slurred, whiskey still wet on his breath. "You need a roof. It's practical." Practical. Clara wanted to laugh. She wanted to scream. Instead, she had climbed into the wagon and watched her entire life disappear behind a curtain of snow. $40. That was her price. Less than a good horse. Less than a winter's worth of firewood. The wagon hit a frozen rut, and Clara's shoulder slammed against the wooden side. She bit her tongue to keep from crying out. "Road's rough through here," Josiah said without turning around. "Hold on." She didn't answer. What was there to say? The snow fell harder. The wind screamed. Clara's fingers went numb inside her threadbare gloves. Then her toes. Then her face. Still, she refused to touch that blanket. Stubbornness was the only thing she had left. "Your uncle," Josiah said suddenly. "He tell you anything about me?" "You're a widower. You have 3 children. You needed someone to keep house." "That all?" "That's all." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the crunch of snow under wheels and the howl of wind through bare trees. "My wife died 2 years ago," Josiah said quietly. "Childbirth. The baby didn't make it either." Clara's chest tightened. She hadn't known about the baby. "I'm sorry," she said. The words felt small, useless. "Her name was Abigail." He paused. "The children still miss her something fierce. Especially Caleb. He's the oldest. 12 years old and angry at the whole world." "I understand angry." Josiah turned his head slightly. For the first time she saw his profile. Strong jaw, tired eyes, a face carved by grief and hard winters. "Reckon you do," he said. "Reckon you got every right." They rode in silence after that. Clara watched the landscape change, Open plains giving way to rolling hills, then the dark edges of pine forest. The snow kept falling. The cold kept biting. Finally, when she couldn't feel her hands anymore, she reached for the blanket. Josiah didn't say a word, didn't gloat, didn't even look. Maybe that was the first moment she thought he might not be a monster after all. The ranch appeared through the snow like a ghost. Two-story house, barn, sheds half buried in white. Smoke curled weakly from the chimney, and a single lantern glowed in the window. Josiah stopped the wagon and climbed down. He stood there for a moment, snow gathering on his shoulders, staring at the house like he was bracing himself. "The children don't know you're coming," he said. Clara's stomach dropped. "What?" "I told them I was going to town for supplies. Didn't tell them I was bringing back." He stopped, rubbed his face. "They're going to be surprised." "You didn't tell them you were buying a wife?" The word hung between them, ugly, sharp, true. "I didn't buy a wife," Josiah said slowly. "I paid your uncle's debt so you wouldn't end up in that saloon across the street. There's a difference." "Is there?" He met her eyes. In the fading light, she saw something she hadn't expected. Shame. "I know how this looks," he said. "I know what you must think of me. But I ain't your enemy, Miss Whitmore. I'm just a man trying to keep his family alive through winter." Clara climbed down from the wagon, her boots sinking into snow up to her ankles. The cold shot through her immediately. "What do you expect from me?" she asked. "Keep the house, care for the children. That's all." "That's all." "I don't expect you to love them," he added, "or me. I just need help. When spring comes, if you want to leave, I won't stop you." Clara stared at him. "You'd let me go?" "You ain't a prisoner. You're a guest who's doing me a kindness." He picked up her small bundle of clothes, everything she owned in the world, and handed it to her. "Door's unlocked. Go on in and warm yourself. I'll see to the horses." He walked away without looking back. Clara stood alone in the snow, heart pounding, watching this strange man disappear into the barn. Then she turned toward the house, toward the children who didn't know she existed, and forced her frozen feet to move. The door creaked open. Warm air hit her face, and for one blessed moment, Clara couldn't think about anything except the heat. Then she saw them. 3 children stood by the fireplace. The youngest was a small boy, maybe 4 years old, clutching a carved wooden horse. His eyes were huge and gray, just like his father's. Behind him stood a girl with light brown braids and a face too serious for her age. 8, maybe 9. She held a wooden spoon like a weapon. And in front of them both stood an older boy, 12, had to be Caleb, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes burning with something that looked like hatred. No one moved. No one spoke. Clara's hand shook as she lowered her bundle to the floor. "Hello," she said softly. The little boy waved his toy horse. "Hello." The girl pressed closer to her brother. Caleb didn't move. "Who are you?" "I'm Clara. I'm going to be staying here for a while." "Pa didn't say nothing about that." "I know. I'm sorry. This must be confusing." "Ain't confused." Caleb's voice was ice. "I know exactly what you are. Pa went to town and bought himself a new wife." The words hit Clara like a slap, but she held herself still. She'd been hit with worse. "Caleb," Josiah's voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him come in. "That's enough." "It's true, ain't it?" Caleb spun toward his father. "You bought her, like you'd buy a horse or a plow." "I said that's enough." Mama's been dead 2 years, and you just go and, I said, enough! The house went silent. The little boy whimpered and pressed against his sister. The girl's face crumpled like she was fighting tears. Josiah stood in the doorway, snow melting on his coat, chest heaving. Clara had never seen a man look so broken and so furious at the same time. "Go to your room," Josiah said quietly. "Now." Caleb's eyes filled with angry tears. "I hate you," he whispered. Then he ran past his father, up the stairs, and slammed a door so hard the whole house shook. Silence. The little boy started to cry. Clara moved before she could think. She knelt down and held out her hands, not touching, not forcing, just offering. "Hey there," she said gently. "It's all right. Nobody's going to hurt you." The boy looked at her with those huge gray eyes. "Caleb's mad." "I know. Sometimes people get mad when they're scared." "Are you scared?" Clara's throat tightened. "A little bit. Are you?" He nodded slowly. Then, to her shock, he stepped forward and took her hand. His fingers were tiny and warm. "I'm Ezra," he said. "That's Sadie. She don't talk much to strangers." Clara looked at the girl, Sadie, who was watching her with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "That's okay," Clara said. "I don't mind quiet." Josiah cleared his throat. "Sadie, take your brother to the kitchen. There's bread in the box." Sadie hesitated, then grabbed Ezra's other hand and pulled him away. But the little boy looked back at Clara and waved his wooden horse goodbye. Something in Clara's chest broke open. Not the same crack as before. This one felt different, warmer, more terrifying. Josiah showed her to a small room on the second floor. A bed, a dresser, a window looking out at nothing but white. "It was the guest room," he said. "Ain't much, but it's warm." "It's fine." He stood in the doorway, looking like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. "The children," Clara started. "Caleb's the hardest. He remembers his mama best. Sees you as a replacement." "I'm not trying to replace anyone." "I know. He don't." Josiah rubbed the back of his neck. "Give him time. He's got a good heart under all that anger." "And Sadie?" "She was there when Abigail died. Saw everything. Ain't been the same since." Clara's stomach turned. "She was 6 years old." "Yes, ma'am. 6 years old, holding her mama's hand while she bled out." His voice cracked. "I wasn't here. I was in town getting supplies. By the time I got back..." He couldn't finish. Didn't need to. "I'm sorry," Clara said again, and this time she meant it differently. "Get some rest." Josiah turned to leave. "Breakfast is at dawn. I'll show you where everything is." "Mr. Brennan?" He stopped. "Thank you for not leaving me at that saloon." He stood there for a long moment, his back to her, shoulders tight. "Good night, Miss Whitmore." Then he was gone. Clara couldn't sleep. The bed was soft, softer than anything she'd slept on in years, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. $40, 3 children, a dead wife, a winter that could last forever. What had she gotten herself into? The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Somewhere in the house, a door creaked. Small footsteps padded down the hall. Clara sat up just as her door opened slowly. Ezra stood there in his nightshirt, barefoot, trembling. "Ezra? What's wrong?" "I had a bad dream." His voice was tiny. "Caleb told me to go away. Sadie's asleep." Clara's heart cracked a little more. "Come here." She lifted him onto the bed and wrapped the quilt around his small body. He was light, too light, and cold from the hallway. "What was your dream about?" she asked. "Mama. She was walking away and I couldn't catch her." his eyes filled with tears. "She keeps walking away." Clara didn't know what to say, so she just held him. "Miss Clara?" "Yes?" "Are you going to be our new mama?" The question hit her like a punch to the chest. She stared at the ceiling, at the shadows dancing from the dying fire downstairs. "Would you want me to be?" she asked carefully. Ezra was quiet for a long time. Then, "I just want someone to tell stories. Mama used to tell stories every night. Papa don't know how." Clara smiled despite herself. "I know some stories." "You do? Want to hear one?" He nodded eagerly, snuggling closer. So Clara told him about a rabbit lost in a blizzard, a rabbit who thought he would never find his way home. But then he met a family of foxes who took him in, even though he was different, even though he didn't belong. "Did the rabbit stay with the foxes?" Ezra asked sleepily. He did. He found out that home isn't always where you're born. Sometimes it's where people choose to keep you. "That's a good story." "I think so too." By the time she finished, Ezra was asleep, his small hand clutching her sleeve. Clara watched him breathe, this tiny boy who had lost his mother before he could remember her. And she made a decision right there in the darkness. She might have been sold for $40. She might be a stranger in this house. But these children needed someone, and maybe, just maybe, she needed them too. Morning came gray and bitter. Clara rose before dawn, careful not to wake Ezra, and crept downstairs to rebuild the fire. The kitchen was cold, the pantry nearly empty. She found some potatoes, salt pork, and enough flour to make biscuits. Not much, but it would have to do. She was stirring a pot of potato soup when Josiah came in, stamping snow from his boots. He stopped when he saw the fire blazing, the table set, the smell of food filling the kitchen. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." "Ezra came to your room last night. I heard him." Clara tensed, waiting for anger. But Josiah just sat down at the table and looked at her with something she couldn't name. "He ain't gone to anyone at night since Abigail died," he said quietly. "Not me, not Caleb, not Sadie. Just cries alone in his bed until he falls asleep." Clara didn't know what to say. "Thank you," Josiah said, "for being kind to him." Before she could answer, Sadie appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She looked at Clara, at the food, at her father. "Smells good," she said softly. It was the first word she'd spoken directly to Clara. "You hungry?" Sadie nodded. Clara set a bowl of soup in front of her, then another for Ezra, who had followed his sister downstairs, then one for Josiah. She set a fourth bowl aside, covering it with a cloth. "That for Caleb?" Josiah asked. "If he wants it." Josiah studied her for a long moment. "He won't come down." "Then I'll leave it for when he's ready." Something shifted in Josiah's eyes, something warm. "You're not what I expected, Miss Whitmore." "Neither are you, Mr. Brennan." They looked at each other across the kitchen. Two broken people, thrown together by circumstance, trying to figure out how to survive. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, the fire crackled. And somewhere upstairs, a 12-year-old boy stared at the ceiling, hating the woman who had invaded his home. The winter had only just begun. 3 days passed. Clara worked. She cooked, cleaned, mended clothes that should have been thrown out years ago. She learned the house, which floorboards creaked, which doors stuck, where the mice came in when the temperature dropped. She learned the children, too. Ezra followed her everywhere, chattering constantly, showing her his carved horses, asking for stories. Sadie was slower to warm, but Clara caught her watching from doorways, and sometimes, just sometimes, She would sit nearby while Clara worked, not speaking, just present. Caleb was a ghost. He ate alone in his room. He worked outside with his father. When Clara entered a room, he left. She didn't push. Pushing never worked with wounded things. On the fourth night, the temperature dropped so low that ice formed inside the windows. Clara woke to find Ezra and Sadie both in her bed, curled together like puppies. She didn't send them away. On the fifth day, the storm came. It screamed out of the mountains without warning. A wall of white so thick Clara couldn't see the barn from the porch. The wind howled like a wounded animal, tearing at the house, rattling doors and windows. Josiah had ridden out at dawn to check the north pasture. He should have been back by noon. By nightfall, he still hadn't returned. "Where's Papa?" Ezra asked, pressing his face to the window. Clara's stomach nodded. "He'll be back soon." But she didn't believe it. And from the look on Caleb's face, the fear breaking through his anger, neither did he. "I'm going to look for him," Caleb said suddenly. "No," Clara grabbed his arm. "You step outside in this, you'll be dead in an hour. He's my father, and you're his son. You think he'd want you dying in a blizzard?" Caleb's eyes filled with tears. "What if he's hurt? What if he's not?" Clara made her voice firm, even though her own fear was choking her. "Your father is strong. He knows this land. He'll find shelter and wait out the storm." "You don't know that." "No, I don't. But I'm choosing to believe it, and so are you." They waited. Hours passed like years. Sadie sat frozen by the fire, not speaking, not crying, just staring at nothing. Ezra fell asleep in Clara's lap, and Caleb stood at the window, watching the snow, his whole body trembling. Near midnight, Clara heard it, a scraping sound at the door. She ran. She threw open the door, and Josiah collapsed into her arms. His skin was ice. His lips were blue. His eyes were closed. "No." Clara dragged him inside, her arms screaming with the effort. "No, no, no. You don't get to do this. You don't get to leave." "Papa!" Caleb was there, helping her, pulling his father toward the fire. "Get blankets," Clara ordered. "All of them. Sadie, heat water. Caleb, help me get his coat off." They worked together, all of them, even little Ezra, bringing blankets with tears streaming down his face. Clara rubbed Josiah's hands, his feet, his chest, anything to bring the warmth back. She talked to him constantly, ordering him to wake up, to breathe, to fight. "You have 3 children who need you," she said fiercely. "You don't get to leave them. You hear me? You don't get to leave." Hours passed. The fire roared. The children huddled together, watching, praying. And just before dawn, Josiah's eyes opened. "Clara?" His voice was barely a whisper. She nearly collapsed with relief. "I'm here. The children, they're fine. They're all fine." He reached up and touched her face with a trembling hand. "You saved my life. The children helped." "No." His eyes found hers, and something passed between them. Something neither of them was ready to name. "I heard you. Every word. You didn't give up." Clara's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. "Somebody had to yell at you." Josiah laughed weakly. Then he looked past her at his children, huddled together, watching him with desperate hope. "Come here," he said. They rushed forward, all 3 of them, and buried themselves against their father. Even Caleb, who was crying openly now, not caring who saw. Clara started to step back, to give them space, but Ezra grabbed her hand. "Stay." And Sadie looked up at her with those serious eyes. "Please." So Clara stayed. She knelt beside them on the cold floor, surrounded by this broken family, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt like she belonged. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the Brennan house, something new had begun. And come morning, nothing would ever be the same. The days after the storm moved slow, heavy with things unspoken. Josiah stayed close to the house while his strength returned, his breath still shallow when he pushed too hard. He did not talk about the night he nearly died. He did not say much at all. But Clara felt his eyes on her constantly. When she stirred the pot at the stove, when she braided Sadie's hair, when she knelt by Ezra's bed and told stories until sleep took him. He watched her like a man trying to solve a puzzle he was afraid to touch. She pretended not to notice. "You need to rest," Clara said on the third morning, finding him pulling on his boots by the door. "Cattle won't feed themselves." "Caleb can handle the cattle." Josiah's jaw tightened. "He's 12 years old." "He's been handling them since you went down. Did fine." Something flickered in Josiah's eyes. Pride, maybe, mixed with guilt. He sat back down heavily, rubbing his chest where the cold had settled deepest. "I ain't used to being useless," he muttered. "You ain't useless. You're healing. There's a difference." He looked up at her then, really looked, and Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. She turned away quickly, busying herself with the dishes. "Caleb did good," Josiah said quietly. "While I was out there in that storm, thinking I was going to die, all I could think about was him, how angry he'd be, how he'd blame himself somehow. He was scared. Still is." "I know." Josiah paused. "He talked to you yet?" "No, but he stopped leaving rooms when I walk in." "That's something." "It's a start." Silence stretched between them, comfortable in a way it hadn't been before. Clara finished the dishes and dried her hands on her apron. "I need to check the root cellar," she said. "We're running low on everything." "Take Caleb with you. Boy needs to feel useful." Clara hesitated. "You sure?" "You respects you now. Won't admit it, but I can tell." Josiah almost smiled. "You yelled at me loud enough to wake the dead. Takes courage to do that to a man you barely know. You were dying. Someone had to yell." "Still," he held her gaze. "Thank you. For not giving up." Clara's throat tightened. "Get some rest, Mr. Brennan." "Joe." "What?" "Call me Joe." "Mr. Brennan was my father, and he was a mean old cuss." She bit back a smile. "Get some rest, Joe." She could feel him watching as she walked away. The root cellar was cold as a tomb. Clara climbed down the ladder with a lantern, Caleb following reluctantly behind her. They worked in silence, sorting through what remained. Potatoes going soft, carrots withered, a few jars of preserves covered in dust. "This ain't gonna last till spring," Caleb said finally. "No, it ain't." "What are we gonna do?" Clara looked at the boy, this angry, scared, grieving boy who was trying so hard to be a man. "We'll figure something out. Always do." "Ma used to say that." His voice cracked. "Always do," she'd say. And then she didn't. Clara set down the jar she was holding. "Caleb, she promised she'd be okay. Promised she wouldn't leave us." His hands were shaking. "She lied." "She didn't lie. She believed it." "Same thing." "No, it ain't." Clara moved closer, careful not to crowd him.
"Your mama loved you more than anything in this world. She fought as hard as she could. Sometimes that ain't enough. But it don't mean she lied. Then why'd she leave?" "She didn't leave. She was taken. There's a difference."
Caleb's face crumpled. For one terrible moment, Clara thought he might break completely. Then he pulled himself together, that familiar anger slamming down like a wall. "We should get back," he said roughly.
"Caleb."
"I said we should get back." He climbed out of the cellar without looking at her. Clara stood alone in the cold, heart aching. Progress, she reminded herself. Slow, painful, but progress. That night, the temperature dropped again. Clara woke to find all 3 children in her room. Ezra curled against her side, Sadie pressed against her back, and Caleb sitting on the floor by the door like a guard dog. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. But when morning came and the children drifted back to their own rooms, Caleb paused at the door.
"You didn't send us away," he said. "Why would I?" He didn't answer, but something in his eyes had changed. The second week brought visitors. Clara was kneading bread when she heard hoofbeats. Multiple horses riding hard. Her hands froze. "Joe!" He was at the window before she finished calling. His face went hard as stone. "Take the children upstairs," he said. "Who is it?" "Just do it. Now." Clara gathered the children quickly, herding them up the stairs despite their protests. But she didn't stay with them. She crept back down, staying out of sight, listening. The front door opened. Cold air rushed in, and with it, voices. "Brennan," a man's voice smooth as oil. "Been a while." "Not long enough, Sloane." Clara's breath caught. Sloane. She'd heard that name whispered in town, back before her uncle sold her. Victor Sloane, richest man in the territory, owned half the ranches from here to Helena. Now, is that any way to greet a neighbor? You ain't my neighbor. You're a vulture circling wounded prey. Sloane laughed. The sound made Clara's skin crawl. Colorful as always. I heard about your little accident in the storm. Terrible thing. Man your age, out alone in weather like that? Could have died. But I didn't. No, you didn't. A pause. I also heard you got yourself a new wife. Mail order, was it? Or did you just buy her outright? Clara's hands curled into fists. What do you want, Sloane? Same thing I've always wanted. Your land. Your water rights. That nice little valley you've been squatting on for 10 years. It ain't squatting when you got a deed. Deeds can be challenged, especially when the territorial court owes you favors. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Get off my property, Joe said quietly. I'm making you an offer, Brennan. A fair price for your land. Enough to start over somewhere else. Take your children. Take your new wife. And disappear. And if I refuse? Another pause. When Sloane spoke again, his voice was ice. Then I'll take what I want anyway, and I won't be nearly as generous. Footsteps. The door creaked. Think about it, Brennan. You've got until spring thaw. After that, Sloane let the threat hang. Well, I'm sure you can imagine. The door slammed. Hoofbeats faded into the distance. Clara stepped out of hiding. Joe stood frozen, his back to her, hands shaking at his sides. Joe? How much did you hear? Enough. He turned. His face was pale, his eyes wild with a fear she hadn't seen before. He's not going to stop. He never stops. Who is he? Victor Sloane. He's been trying to take this land for years, since before Abigail died. Joe's voice broke on his wife's name. He wanted her, too, back when we were young. She chose me, and he never forgave either of us. Clara's blood went cold. He wanted your wife? Obsessed with her, wrote her letters, followed her. When she married me, he swore he'd destroy everything I loved. Joe laughed bitterly. He's been doing a pretty good job. You think he
had something to do with her death? Joe's silence was answer enough. We need to go to the law, Clara said. Sloan owns the law. The sheriff, the judge, half the territorial council. There's no one who'll stand against him. Then we fight. Joe stared at her. You don't understand. He has money, men, power. We have nothing. Clara stepped closer, her chin raised. We have this land. We have each other. And I didn't survive 18 years of hell just to run from some rich man who thinks he can take what he wants. Clara, this is my home now. These are my children. And no one, not Sloan, not anyone, is taking that from me. Something shifted in Joe's eyes. The fear didn't disappear, but something else rose beside it. Hope, maybe, or the first flicker of fight. You really mean that, he said. Every word. He reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough, calloused, warm. I won't let him hurt you, he said quietly. Any of you, I swear it. Then we stand together. Together, he repeated, like he was testing the weight of the word. Clara squeezed his hand. Together. From the top of the stairs, 3 pairs of eyes watched in silence. The next few days were tense. Joe started carrying his rifle everywhere. He taught Caleb to load and shoot, and Clara saw the fear in the boy's eyes transform into determination. Pa thinks something bad's coming, Caleb said one afternoon, when they were alone in the barn. Maybe. That man, Sloan, he's the one, ain't he? Clara paused. The one what? The one who sent those letters to Ma. The one she burned before Pa could see. Clara's heart stopped. What letters? Caleb's face was pale but steady. I was 8 when she died, but I remember things. Late at night she'd sit by the fire reading letters. Then she'd burn them, every single one. And she'd cry. Did you ever read them? Once, just one. I snuck it out before she could burn it. His voice dropped. He said terrible things. Said she belonged to him. Said he'd wait forever. Said Pa would pay for stealing her. Clara's hand shook. Caleb, do you still have that letter? I hid it, under a loose board in my room. He looked at her with those 2 old eyes. I didn't know what to do with it. I was just a kid. Can you get it? He nodded and ran toward the house. Clara leaned against the barn wall, her mind racing. Evidence, real evidence of Sloan's obsession. If they could prove he'd been threatening Abigail, maybe they could prove more. Maybe they could finally fight back. Caleb returned minutes later, breathless, holding a yellowed envelope. Clara's hands trembled as she unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was elegant, precise, and filled with madness. My dearest Abigail, she read aloud, you think you can escape me by hiding on that worthless patch of dirt with that worthless man? You belong to me. You have always belonged to me. And one day, when Brennan is gone and his children are scattered, you will remember. You will come back. Or I will burn everything you love until there's nothing left. Clara looked up. Caleb's face was white. He killed her, the boy whispered. Didn't he? I don't know, but we're going to find out. That night, Clara showed Joe the letter. He read it once, twice, 3 times. Then he stood up so fast his chair crashed to the floor, and he walked outside into the freezing dark. Clara found him behind the barn, his fist bloody from punching the wall. I should have known, he said, his voice raw. All those years, she was terrified and I didn't see it. I was too busy working, too busy trying to build something, and I didn't see that she was dying inside. You couldn't have known. I should have. He spun to face her, tears streaming down his weathered face. She was my wife. I was supposed to protect her. And instead I let that monster—" He couldn't finish. Clara did something she'd never done before. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. For a moment, he went rigid. Then he collapsed against her, his whole body shaking with sobs he'd been holding back for 2 years. "It's not your fault," she whispered. "It's not your fault. I loved her so much. I know. And now I'm—" He stopped himself, pulled back, looked at her with those red-rimmed eyes. "Now you're what?" Clara asked softly. He didn't answer, but his hand came up to touch her face, gentle as a whisper. "Clara." "Papa?" They sprang apart. Sadie stood in the doorway of the barn, her small face worried. "Ezra's crying," she said. "He had another nightmare." "I'll come." Clara smoothed her skirts, her cheeks burning. "Joe, we'll talk tomorrow." He nodded, still looking at her with that strange, searching expression. As Clara walked back to the house, she felt something shift inside her chest. Something she hadn't felt in so long she'd forgotten its name. Hope. And something else. Something more dangerous. She was falling in love with Josiah Brennan, and that terrified her more than Victor Sloan ever could. 2 nights later, Clara woke to the smell of smoke. She was out of bed before she fully understood what was happening, running down the stairs, screaming for the children. "Fire! Everybody out!" The barn was ablaze. Orange flames clawed at the night sky, and the horses were screaming, that terrible sound that would haunt her forever. Joe ran past her, shouting orders. Caleb followed with buckets. Clara grabbed Sadie and Ezra, pushing them toward the well, away from the heat. "Stay here! Don't move!" She ran back to help. The heat was unbearable. Smoke filled her lungs, but Joe was inside the barn, trying to free the horses, and she couldn't leave him. "Joe!" A beam cracked, fell. Clara screamed, but Joe stumbled out, leading 2 terrified horses, his face black with soot. "The others," he gasped. "It's too late. We have to go." They ran. Behind them, the barn collapsed in a shower of sparks. The family huddled together in the snow, watching their winter feed go up in flames. Months of work. Gone. "Papa," Sadie whimpered, "what happened?" Joe's face was carved from stone. "Someone set the fire. I found the kerosene cans." Clara's blood turned to ice. "Sloan." "He wants us to run." Joe's voice was quiet, deadly. "He thinks if he scares us enough, we'll give up." "Will we?" He looked at her, at the children, at the burning ruins of everything he'd built. "No," he said. "We fight." The next morning, an older woman arrived on horseback. Ruth Kincaid, a neighbor from the next valley over. She'd seen the smoke and come to help. "Sloan's been pulling this for years," Ruth said grimly, sitting at Clara's kitchen table. "Any rancher who won't sell, something bad happens. Fire, cattle gone missing, accidents. And no one stops him? Who's going to stop him? He owns this territory." Ruth leaned forward. "But I know things that could bring him down." Clara's heart pounded. "What things?" "His first wife died 15 years ago. Fire, just like this. Everyone called it an accident." Ruth's eyes were hard. "It wasn't." "You have proof?" "I have a witness. Old hand who worked for Sloan back then. Saw him set the fire himself. Man's been hiding ever since, scared for his life. But if you can get him to Helena, get him to testify—" "Sloan would kill him first." "Probably." Ruth stood. "But sometimes you gotta risk everything to do what's right. You think on it. I'll be back in a week." After she left, Clara found Joe standing at the window, staring at the ashes of his barn.
"We could leave," she said quietly. "Take the children somewhere safe."
There is nowhere safe. Sloane would find us.
"Then what do we do?"
Joe turned to face her. In his eyes, she saw fear, anger, grief, and underneath it all, a fierce determination. We find that witness. We take this to court, and we end this.
"It could get us killed."
Maybe. He reached for her hand. But I'd rather die fighting than live running. Clara laced her fingers through his.
"Then we fight."
Together.
Together.
From across the room, Caleb watched them with something new in his eyes. Not anger, not resentment. Understanding. That night, after the children were asleep, Joe found Clara sitting by the dying fire. He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I need to tell you something," he said.
"What?"
He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I didn't just buy you to save you from that saloon." Clara's breath caught.
"What do you mean?" "I mean, I'd seen you before. In town. 3 months ago. You were carrying water from the well, and your uncle was yelling at you, and you just kept walking. Like nothing he said could touch you."
Joe's voice dropped. "I thought you were the strongest person I'd ever seen."
"Joe."
"I've been dead inside for 2 years, Clara. Since Abigail. Just going through the motions, trying to keep the children alive. And then I saw you, and something woke up." Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear him. "I told myself it was practical, that you needed help and I needed help, and that was all it was. But that ain't true." He turned to face her, his eyes raw and honest. "I wanted you here. Specifically you. Because even from across a muddy street, I could tell you were someone worth fighting for."
"You don't know me."
"I know enough. I know you saved my life. I know you love my children like they're your own. I know that every time you walk into a room, I can breathe again for the first time in years." Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks. "I'm nobody. I was sold for $40. You are everything." Joe reached up and cradled her face in his hands. "And I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that you're worth more than any price anyone could ever pay." He kissed her. It was soft, tentative, asking permission. And Clara answered by pulling him closer, kissing him back with all the hope and fear and longing she'd kept locked away for so long. When they finally broke apart, both of them were trembling. "I'm falling in love with you, Clara Whitmore," Joe whispered. She touched his face, tracing the lines of grief and hope. "I think I already fell." They sat together by the fire until the embers died, hands intertwined, hearts full. And in the darkness outside, unseen, a rider watched the house, then turned and galloped toward Victor Sloane's ranch. The war was just beginning. The rider's report reached Victor Sloane before sunrise. By noon, everything changed. Clara was hanging laundry when she saw the dust cloud rising on the road. Too many horses. Too fast. Her hands went cold. "Joe!" He was beside her in seconds, rifle already in his hands. "Get the children inside. Lock the doors." "Joe!" "Now, Clara." She ran, grabbed Ezra from the porch, called for Sadie. But Caleb was already at the window, his father's old pistol in his shaking hands. "Put that down," Clara ordered. "No, ma'am." "Caleb." "He taught me to shoot. I ain't hiding while Pa faces them alone." There was no time to argue. The horses were already at the gate. Clara counted 7 men, all armed. And at the front, riding a black stallion, sat Victor Sloane. He was older than she'd expected. Silver hair, sharp jaw, eyes like chips of ice. He wore his wealth like armor, fine coat, polished boots, a smile that made her stomach turn. Joe stepped off the porch, rifle leveled. "That's far enough." Sloane raised his hands in mock surrender. Now, Brennan, is that any way to greet guests?" "You ain't a guest. You're a trespasser." "I prefer the term interested party." Sloane's eyes drifted past Joe, found Clara in the window. His smile widened. "And who might this be? The new Mrs. Brennan?" "Leave her out of this." "Oh, I don't think I can do that." Sloane dismounted slowly, deliberately. His men stayed mounted, hands on their weapons. "You see, I've been watching your little family. The children, the cozy dinners, the late-night conversations by the fire." Clara's blood turned to ice. "Touching, really," Sloane continued. "A broken man finds love again. A damaged woman finds a home. It's practically a fairy tale." His voice hardened. "Unfortunately, fairy tales don't end well in my territory." "What do you want, Sloane?" "What I've always wanted. Your land, your water rights, everything your hands have touched." He paused. "And maybe something else." "Get to the point." Sloane reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. "I have here a legal claim to your property, signed by Judge Harrison, stamped by the territorial court. You have 30 days to vacate, or my men will remove you by force. That claim is bogus, and you know it." "Prove it." Sloane's smile was pure poison. "Oh, wait, you can't. Because the only deed that matters is locked in the court archives, and Judge Harrison owes me his career." He tucked the document away. 30 days, Brennan. Use them wisely." He turned to leave, then stopped, looked back at Clara with those cold, appraising eyes. "Mrs. Brennan, a word of advice. Men who stand against me tend to have accidents, tragic ones. If I were you, I'd start thinking about what comes after." "If you threaten my family again," Clara said quietly, "I will kill you myself." The words hung in the air like gunsmoke. Sloane laughed, a genuine laugh, full of surprise and something darker. "I can see why he chose you. Fire in the blood." He tipped his hat. 30 days. He mounted his horse and rode away. His men followed, leaving nothing but dust and silence. Joe stood frozen until the last rider disappeared. Then his legs gave out. Clara caught him before he hit the ground. "Joe!" I'm all right. But his face was gray, his hands shaking. 30 days. He's giving us 30 days. Then we use every single one. The search for the witness began that night. Ruth Kincaid returned with a name. Emmett Holloway, former ranch hand, now hiding in a shack somewhere in the mountains north of Helena. The man who'd seen Victor Sloane set the fire that killed his first wife. "He won't come easy," Ruth warned. "Man's been running for 15 years. Thinks Sloane has eyes everywhere." "He probably does," Joe said grimly. "Then how do we get to him?" Clara stepped forward. "I'll go." "Absolutely not. Think about it, Joe. Sloane's watching you. Every move you make, he'll know about. But me?" She shrugged. "I'm just the mail-order bride. Nobody important. I could ride to Helena and back, and he'd never think twice." "It's too dangerous." "So is staying here and waiting to die." Joe grabbed her hands. "Clara, if something happened to you..." "Nothing's going to happen. I survived 18 years of hell before I met you. I can survive a trip to the mountains." They argued for an hour. Clara won. 3 days later, she rode out before dawn. Joe kissed her like he might never see her again. The children clung to her legs and begged her not to go.
"I'll be back," she promised. "1 week, maybe less."
"You better," Caleb said roughly. "Ezra won't stop crying if you don't." Clara hugged him, the first time he'd let her.
"Take care of them. All of them."
"Yes, ma'am." She rode north, into the teeth of winter. The journey took 4 days.
Clara pushed hard, sleeping in barns when she could find them, under trees when she couldn't.
The cold was brutal, but she'd known worse. Nothing hurt more than being sold. On the 4th day, she found the shack. It was barely standing, walls gray with age, roof sagging under snow. No smoke from the chimney, no sign of life. Clara dismounted and approached slowly.
"Mr. Holloway? My name is Clara Brennan. I'm here about Victor Sloan."
Silence.
"I know you're scared. I am too. But that man is trying to destroy my family, and you're the only one who can stop him."
Still nothing. Clara pulled out the letter, Sloane's letter to Abigail, the one Caleb had hidden for years.
"He killed before. He's going to kill again, unless someone stands up."
A long pause, then a voice, rusty from disuse. "How do I know you ain't working for him?"
"Because if I was, I'd have brought men with guns instead of a letter from a dead woman."
The door creaked open. A man stood in the shadows, gaunt, gray-bearded, with eyes that had seen too much. "You Brennan's wife?"
"I am."
"He know what he's up against?"
"He knows. We both do."
Emmett Holloway stared at her for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. "Come in. We got a lot to talk about." The story Emmett told made Clara's blood run cold. "I was young when I worked for Sloan. 20 years old, dumb as a post, grateful for the pay. Didn't ask questions."
"What did you see?"
Emmett's hands shook as he poured whiskey into a tin cup. His wife, Margaret. Sweet woman. Kind. Too kind for a man like him. She wanted to leave. Found out he'd been running crooked deals, stealing land, bribing officials. Said she'd go to the authorities.
"And he killed her."
Burned the house down with her inside. Made it look like an accident. Emmett drained his cup. I saw him do it. Saw him light the match. He looked right at me and smiled. Said if I ever talked, he'd do the same to me.
"But you're talking now." "Because I'm tired. Tired of running. Tired of being scared."
He looked at Clara with haunted eyes. "And because I knew Abigail Brennan. She was Margaret's cousin. She came to me after Margaret died, begging me to tell the truth. I was too much of a coward." Clara's heart stopped.
"Abigail knew?"
She knew everything. Sloan was obsessed with her, had been since they were children. When she married Brennan, it drove him mad. He swore he'd take everything Brennan loved, piece by piece.
"You think he killed Abigail too?"
Emmett was quiet for a long moment. "I think he found a way to make sure she'd never talk. Whether that was the childbirth or something else," he shrugged. "I can't prove it, but I know what that man is capable of." Clara stood up.
"Will you come to Helena? Testify before the territorial court?"
"They'll kill me."
"They might kill all of us if you don't."
Emmett stared into his empty cup. Then he laughed, a bitter, broken sound.
"You know what? Fine. I've been dead inside for 15 years anyway. Might as well make it mean something."
They left the next morning. The ride back was slower. Emmett was weak from years of isolation, and the weather had turned vicious. Snow fell thick and fast, and more than once Clara thought they might not make it. On the 3rd day, they found the road blocked. 4 men on horseback, all wearing the Sloan brand. Mrs. Brennan, the leader tipped his hat. Mr. Sloane would like a word. I have nothing to say to him. That wasn't a request. Clara's hand moved toward the rifle strapped to her saddle. The leader shook his head. I wouldn't. 4 against 1 ain't good odds, even for a woman with fire in her blood. Behind her, Emmett made a small sound of terror. Clara's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned. But if Sloane got his hands on Emmett... Fine, she said. Take me to him. But the old man goes free. Clara, no. Shut up, Emmett. She kept her eyes on the leader. That's the deal. Me for him. The man considered, then nodded. Mr. Sloane will appreciate your cooperation. They let Emmett go. Clara watched him ride away, praying he'd make it to the Brennan ranch, praying Joe would know what to do. Then the men closed around her, and she rode toward whatever waited at the end. Victor Sloane's ranch was everything the Brennan homestead wasn't. Grand, sprawling, built with stolen money and broken bones. Clara was taken to a study lined with books she doubted he'd ever read. Mrs. Brennan. Sloane rose from behind a massive desk, that serpent smile on his face. How kind of you to accept my invitation. I didn't have much choice. No, I suppose you didn't. He gestured to a chair. Please, sit. I'll stand. As you wish. He circled her slowly, like a predator sizing up prey. I must admit, I'm impressed. Riding into the mountains alone, finding Holloway, convincing him to talk. You're more resourceful than I expected, and you're more of a coward, hiding behind lawyers and hired guns. Sloane's smile flickered. Careful. Or what? You'll kill me? Burn me like you burned your wife? The slap came so fast, Clara didn't see it. She hit the floor hard, tasting blood. Margaret was a traitor, Sloane said quietly. She betrayed me. Just like Abigail. Just like everyone who's ever stood against me. Clara pushed herself up, ignoring the pain. You murdered them. I removed obstacles. There's a difference. The court will decide that. Sloane laughed. What court? Holloway will never make it to Helena. My men are tracking him as we speak. And you... He knelt down, gripped her chin. You're going to help me destroy your husband. I'd rather die. That can be arranged. He released her, stood. But I think I have a better idea. He walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. You know what I loved most about Abigail? Her loyalty. Even when I offered her everything, wealth, power, a life of luxury, she chose that dirt farmer. She chose love. She chose wrong. Sloane turned back. But you're different. You were sold like property, discarded like trash. You know what it means to have nothing. And I'm offering you everything. Divorce Brennan. Testify that he's unfit to hold that land. In return, I'll give you more money than you've ever seen. A new life. Freedom. Clara stared at him. You're insane. I'm practical, just like you. He smiled. Think about it. One signature and you never have to scrub another floor. Never have to beg for scraps. Never have to wonder if you're worth anything. For one horrible moment, Clara saw it. The ease, the escape, the end of struggle. Then she thought of Ezra's laugh, Sadie's shy smile, Caleb's grudging respect, Joe's hands on her face, his voice breaking as he told her she was worth everything. No, she said. No? I'd rather die poor and honest than live rich and rotten like you. Sloane's face went cold. Then you'll die, and so will your husband, And those children you pretend to love.
You won't touch them.
I already have. He pulled out a telegram. My men reached the Brennan Ranch an hour ago. By now, the house is surrounded. One signal from me, and they burn it to the ground, with everyone inside. Clara's heart stopped. So here's the new deal, Sloane said pleasantly. Sign the papers, denounce your husband, and I'll let them live. Refuse? He shrugged. Well, you know how these things end. The room spun. Clara couldn't breathe. The children, Joe, everything she loved. Clock's ticking, Mrs. Brennan. Clara looked at the papers on the desk, the pen waiting beside them. All she had to do was sign, betray everything she believed in, save the people she loved. She reached for the pen, and then she heard it. Hoofbeats. Dozens of them. Shouting.
Sloane's face went pale. What?
The door burst open. A man in the U.S. Marshal's badge stood in the doorway, flanked by armed men. Victor Sloane, the marshal said, you're under arrest for murder, arson, and corruption of territorial officials. This is outrageous. I'll have your badge. You'll have a cell. The marshal nodded to his men. Take him. Sloane fought, screamed, threatened. It didn't matter. They dragged him away like the criminal he was. Clara stood frozen, unable to process what had happened. The marshal approached her. Mrs. Brennan, are you hurt? My family. Safe. We got to the ranch before Sloane's men could do anything. He smiled. Your husband's quite persuasive. He rode halfway to Helena screaming about federal jurisdiction until someone finally listened. Clara's legs gave out. The marshal caught her before she hit the floor. It's over, he said gently. It's all over. But Clara couldn't hear him. She was crying too hard. The ride home took 2 days. Clara pushed her horse harder than she ever had, barely stopping to rest. When the Brennan Ranch finally came into view, house still standing, smoke curling from the chimney, she thought her heart might burst. Joe saw her first. He was off the porch and running before she'd even stopped the horse. They collided in the snow, holding each other so tight it hurt. I thought I lost you, Joe gasped. When Emmett showed up alone, when he told me what happened, I'm here. I'm here. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever. She kissed him, hard and desperate and full of everything she couldn't say. Clara! The children swarmed her. Ezra clung to her legs. Sadie buried her face in Clara's coat. Even Caleb wrapped his arms around her, not caring who saw. You came back, he said roughly. You promised, and you came back. Always, Clara whispered. Always. That night, after the children were asleep, Joe and Clara sat by the fire. He held her hand like he was afraid she'd disappear. Sloane's in custody, he said. The marshal says the trial will be in Helena. Federal court this time, not territorial. He's got no one to bribe. Emmett will testify? Already agreed. Turns out getting a federal escort changed his mind about courage. Clara leaned her head on Joe's shoulder. Is it really over? The hard part is. Joe pressed a kiss to her hair. Now comes the rest of our lives. That doesn't scare you? Not me more. He tilted her chin up, looked into her eyes. I love you, Clara. I want to marry you proper, in a church, with the children there, in front of God and everyone. Clara's heart swelled. Is that a proposal? It's a promise. If you'll have me. She touched his face, this man who had bought her for $40 and given her everything. I'll have you, she said. Today, tomorrow, and every day after. Joe kissed her, slow and sweet and full of hope. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. For the first time in months, stars blazed across the Wyoming sky. And inside the Brennan house, a family held each other close, finally believing that the worst was behind them. They didn't know that the hardest choice was still to come. The letter from Helena arrived 3 weeks later. Clara was washing dishes when Joe came through the door, his face pale as winter sky. He held the envelope like it might bite him. "What is it?" "Sloane's trial. They want us there. Both of us." Clara dried her hands slowly. "When?" "2 weeks. They need testimony. Yours, mine, Emmett's. The whole story, start to finish." "Then we go." "Clara," Joe set the letter down. "His lawyers are saying things. About you. About how you came to be here." Her stomach dropped. "What things?" "That you were coerced. That I forced you into this marriage. That your testimony can't be trusted because you're afraid of me." "That's insane." "It's strategy."
"They're trying to discredit everything before we even take the stand." Clara grabbed his hands. "Let them try. I'll tell the truth, every word of it."
"Even the part about $40? She flinched, but she didn't look away.
"Especially that part, because that's where the story starts,
And it's not where it ends." The journey to Helena took 5 days. They left the children with Ruth Kincaid, who promised to guard them with her life. Caleb wanted to come. "I can testify too," he argued. "I have the letter. I know what Sloane did to Ma." "You're 12 years old," Joe said firmly. "The court won't let you take the stand." "Then why do I have to stay behind?" "Because someone needs to protect your brother and sister." Joe knelt down, eye to eye with his son. "I'm trusting you, Caleb. Can you do this?" The boy's jaw tightened. "Yes, sir." "Good man." Caleb looked at Clara then, a long, measuring look. "Bring him back safe."
"I will."
"Promise?" Clara touched his face.
"I promise."
Helena was chaos. The territorial capital buzzed with news of the trial. Victor Sloane, the richest man in Wyoming, accused of murder and corruption. Newspapers shouted headlines. People lined up outside the courthouse, hoping for seats. Clara and Joe were escorted to a small hotel by federal marshals. "Stay inside," the lead marshal warned. "Sloane's got friends everywhere. Until this trial's over, you're targets." "We understand," Joe said. But Clara couldn't stop staring out the window. Somewhere in this city, a man who had tried to destroy everything she loved was waiting for his chance to escape justice. She wouldn't let that happen. The first day of trial was hell. Sloane's lawyers were sharks, expensive, ruthless, trained to tear witnesses apart. They went after Emmett first, questioning his memory, his motives, his years of silence. "You waited 15 years to come forward," the lead attorney sneered.
"Why should anyone believe you now?"
"Because I'm tired of being afraid. Or because you were promised immunity for your own crimes." Emmett's face went gray. "I never committed any. You were present when Margaret Sloane died. You did nothing to stop it. That makes you an accessory, Mr. Holloway." "I was 20 years old. He would have killed me too." "So you say." The attorney smiled like a snake. Clara wanted to scream. When it was her turn, she walked to the witness stand with her head high. The courtroom was packed. She could feel Sloane's eyes on her. Cold, calculating, waiting for weakness. She wouldn't give him any. "State your name for the record." "Clara May Brennan." "And how did you come to be married to Josiah Brennan?" Clara took a breath. "He paid $40 to my uncle to settle a debt. In exchange, I agreed to keep his house and care for his children." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. "So you were purchased. I was sold. There's a difference. Is there? Clara leaned forward. When you're sold, you have no choice. When you're purchased, the buyer has all the power. Mr. Brennan gave me that power back. He told me I could leave whenever I wanted. He treated me with respect. He never once made me feel like property. And yet you're here, testifying on his behalf. Convenient. I'm here because Victor Sloan tried to burn my family alive. I'm here because he murdered his first wife. I'm here because he terrorized Abigail Brennan until the day she died. Clara's voice rose. I'm here because someone has to stop him. Mrs. Brennan, do you have any proof that my client harmed Abigail Brennan? Clara pulled out the letter, the one Caleb had hidden for years. I have this. The courtroom exploded. Joe testified next. He spoke about the fire, the threats, the years of harassment. His voice cracked when he talked about Abigail, the letters she burned, the fear she hid, the death that came too soon.
I didn't know, he said quietly. She never told me how bad it was. She was trying to protect me.
And now you're trying to destroy my client, the attorney countered.
I'm trying to get justice for my wife, for my children, for every family Sloan has terrorized.
How noble. The attorney's voice dripped sarcasm. Tell me, Mr. Brennan, did you ever suspect your wife was having an affair with my client? The courtroom went silent. Joe's face turned to stone.
What did you say?
The letters, Mr. Brennan. Those passionate, personal letters. Don't they suggest a relationship?
Those were threats, obsession, not love.
Are you certain? You said yourself your wife kept secrets. Perhaps there were more than you knew. Clara saw Joe's hands clench into fists. She willed him to stay calm.
My wife loved me, Joe said quietly. She chose me. That's what drove Sloan mad, that she chose a dirt farmer over a rich man. He couldn't stand it. He never could.
A touching interpretation. It's the truth, the attorney smiled. We'll see what the jury thinks. That night, Clara found Joe sitting alone in their hotel room, staring at nothing. She sat beside him without speaking. What if they're right? He said finally.
They're not. But what if she did? What if there was something I didn't know? Joe.
Clara took his face in her hands.
Look at me. Abigail loved you. She chose you. She died protecting your children from that monster. Don't let his lawyers poison that. I just keep thinking. All those years I was so focused on the ranch, the work, keeping food on the table. What if I missed something? You didn't miss anything. You loved her. That's not missing. That's living.
Joe's eyes filled with tears.
I'm scared, Clara. Not of losing the trial. Of losing the memory of what we had. Of letting him twist it into something ugly. He can't twist what's real. And what was real between you and Abigail, that was beautiful. Don't let anyone take that from you.
He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair.
I don't deserve you, he whispered. Yes, you do. We deserve each other.
They held on through the night. The trial's turning point came on day 4. A new witness took the stand. A woman Clara had never seen before. Middle-aged, well-dressed, with eyes that had seen too much. State your name for the record.
Eleanor Walsh. I was Victor Sloan's housekeeper for 20 years.
Clara sat up straighter. Joe grabbed her hand. Mrs. Walsh, why have you come forward? Eleanor's voice trembled, but held.
Because I can't carry this anymore. I've kept his secrets for too long. It's eating me alive.
What secrets?
All of them.
She looked directly at Sloane. For the first time, Clara saw fear in his eyes. "I know about Margaret. I know about the fire. I know about the bribes, the threats, the other women." Other women? Ones who refused him. Ones who disappeared.
Eleanor's voice cracked. "I thought if I stayed quiet, I'd be safe. But there's no safe. Not with him. There never was."
"Can you tell the court what you witnessed?" "I can tell you what he said to me the night Margaret died." Eleanor took a shaky breath. "He came home with soot on his hands. I asked what happened. He smiled and said, 'I finally got her to stop talking.'" The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Sloane lunged to his feet, screaming denials. Clara watched it all with cold satisfaction. This was it. The moment everything changed. Eleanor Walsh wasn't finished. "There's more," she said, once order was restored, "about Abigail Brennan." Joe went rigid beside Clara. "The night she died, the night she was supposed to be giving birth, I saw one of Mr. Sloane's men ride toward the Brennan ranch. He was carrying a small bottle. Mr. Sloane told me it was medicine." "Did you believe him?" "No, ma'am. I'd seen that bottle before. I knew what was in it."
"What was in it, Mrs. Walsh?" Eleanor's voice dropped to a whisper. "Poison. The kind that makes a body bleed."
The world stopped. Clara heard a sound beside her, a terrible, broken sound. Joe had gone white as death. "You're saying Victor Sloane poisoned Abigail Brennan?" "I'm saying he sent a man with a bottle of poison the night she died." "What happened after?" Eleanor shook her head. "I can only guess." Clara grabbed Joe before he could stand. "Don't. Not here. Not now." "He killed her." Joe's voice was barely human. "He killed her and made it look like—" I know. But we have to let the court handle this." "Court? Court?" Joe was shaking violently. "That man murdered my wife. He murdered the mother of my children. And you want me to sit here and let lawyers—" "I want you to let him hang." Clara's voice cut through his rage. "I want you to watch them put a rope around his neck and drop him through the floor. And that won't happen if you attack him now." Joe stared at her, chest heaving. "He took everything from me, Clara." "Not everything." She pressed her hand to his heart. "Not the children. Not the memories. Not me. He tried, but he failed. Let the law finish what we started." For a long, terrible moment, she thought he would break away, charge the stand, destroy everything they'd worked for. Then he sat down. His hands were still shaking, but he sat. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Clara and Joe waited in a small room surrounded by marshals. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. When the door finally opened and they were summoned back to the courtroom, Clara thought her heart might stop. The judge looked at the jury foreman. "Have you reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor." "On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Margaret Sloane?" "Guilty." "On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Abigail Brennan?" A pause. Clara stopped breathing. "Guilty."
"On the charges of arson, corruption, and conspiracy?"
"Guilty on all counts." The courtroom exploded. People cheered. People cried. Victor Sloane screamed that he'd been framed, that they'd all pay, that this wasn't over. But it was over. Everyone knew it. Joe sat frozen, tears streaming down his face. "It's done," Clara whispered. "She got justice. They all did." "It won't bring her back." "No, but it means she didn't die for nothing." The judge banged his gavel. Silence fell. "Victor Sloane, you have been found guilty of murder, arson, and conspiracy. The sentence for these crimes is death by hanging, to be carried out at dawn, 3 days hence." Sloane's face went gray. For the first time, He looked like what he truly was, a small, pathetic man who had destroyed lives because he couldn't control them. "May God have mercy on your soul," the judge said, "because this court has none." They hung Victor Sloan on a Tuesday morning. Joe didn't attend. Neither did Clara. They stayed at the hotel, holding each other, waiting for it to end. When the marshal came to tell them it was done, Joe didn't move. He just closed his eyes and breathed. "How do you feel?" Clara asked quietly. "Empty." He opened his eyes. "I thought I'd feel something. Relief, joy, vindication. But I just feel empty." "That's because revenge doesn't fill the holes, Joe. It just stops new ones from being made." "Then what fills them?" Clara took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "Life," she said. "New life." Joe stared at her. "Clara, are you—" "I wasn't sure until yesterday. I wanted to wait until the trial was over." "We're going to have a baby. Come autumn." For a long moment, Joe didn't move. Then his face crumpled and he was crying. But this time, they were different tears. "After everything," he choked out. "After all of it, you're giving me this. We're giving each other this. A new beginning." He kissed her, deep and desperate and full of wonder.
I love you, Clara Brennan. I love you too, Josiah Brennan. Now let's go home to our children.
The ride back to Wyoming felt different, lighter. The snow was finally starting to melt, and everywhere Clara looked, she saw signs of spring pushing through. They talked about the future, about rebuilding the barn, about the baby, about the wedding they'd have as soon as the preacher could arrange it. "I want a church wedding," Clara said. "A real one, with the children there." "Anything you want." "And I want to plant a garden. Vegetables, herbs, maybe some flowers." "Whatever you want." "And I want you to stop agreeing with everything I say." Joe grinned, the first real smile she'd seen from him in weeks. "Can't help it. You're always right." When the ranch finally came into view, Clara's heart swelled. The house stood solid against the pale blue sky. Smoke curled from the chimney, and 3 small figures were running toward them across the muddy yard. "Papa! Clara!" The children crashed into them like a wave. Ezra attached himself to Clara's leg. Sadie wrapped her arms around her father's waist. Even Caleb was smiling. "Is it over?" Caleb asked. "Really over?" "It's over," Joe said. "He's gone. He can never hurt us again." "Good!" Caleb's voice was fierce. "I'm glad he's dead." "Caleb, I don't care if it's wrong. He killed Ma. He tried to kill us. I'm glad." Joe put his hand on his son's shoulder. "I know. Part of me is too." "Just part?" "The rest of me is tired of death. Tired of hate. I want to spend the rest of my life loving the people I still have." Caleb looked at Clara. "Does that include her?" "More than you know." The boy was quiet for a moment. Then he stepped forward and hugged Clara. A real hug, not the awkward half-embrace from before. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up. On Pa. On us. On any of it." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't give up. You're my family." "Yeah," Caleb pulled back, wiping his eyes roughly. "I guess you are." That night, after dinner, Joe stood up and cleared his throat. "I have something to say." The children looked up. Clara raised an eyebrow. "Clara and I are getting married. Proper married, in a church, soon as the preacher can manage it." Ezra cheered. Sadie clapped. Caleb just nodded, like he'd known all along. "And there's something else." Joe took Clara's hand. "Come autumn, you're all going to have a new brother or sister. Silence. Then Ezra exploded. "A baby? What, having a baby?" "That's right, little man." "I'm going to be a big brother, like Caleb." "You already are a big brother," Sadie pointed out. "But now I'll be more of one." Clara laughed through her tears. "I hope you're all okay with this. I know it's a lot." Sadie came to her side and leaned against her. "It's not a lot. It's perfect." "Sadie, you love us."
Pa loves you. The baby will love everybody. She shrugged like it was the simplest thing in the world. That's all that matters. Clara wrapped her arms around the girl and held on tight. Later, when the children were finally asleep, Clara and Joe sat by the fire. His hand rested on her stomach, warm and gentle. "I never thought I'd have this again," he said softly. "Have what?" "Hope. Real hope. The kind that makes you want to wake up tomorrow." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "Neither did I." $40. "What?" "That's what I paid for you. $40. He shook his head. "Cheapest miracle I ever bought." She laughed. "I prefer to think of it as an investment." "Yeah? What's the return?" "Everything. Absolutely everything." He kissed her forehead, and they watched the fire burn down together. Outside, the last of the winter melted away, and somewhere in the distance, spring was finally coming home. But not everyone was ready to let the past stay buried. And some ghosts, Clara would learn, never truly die. The ghost arrived on a Sunday morning, 3 months after Victor Sloane's body dropped through the gallows floor. Clara was in the kitchen, hands deep in bread dough, when she heard the wagon. She wiped her hands and walked to the window. A stranger, a woman in a fine traveling dress, was climbing down in front of the house. Joe stepped off the porch to meet her. Clara couldn't hear the words, but she saw the moment his whole body went rigid. Saw the color drain from his face. Saw him take a step back like he'd been shot. She was out the door before she could think. "Joe?" He didn't turn. His eyes were locked on the stranger. "Joe, what's wrong? Who is this?" The woman turned to face Clara. She was older, 50 maybe, with sharp features and cold eyes. Eyes that felt familiar somehow. "You must be the new wife," the woman said. "How quaint." "Who are you?" "My name is Victoria Sloane. Victor was my brother." Clara's blood turned to ice. "I see my reputation precedes me." Victoria's smile was thin as a blade. "Don't worry, Mrs. Brennan. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for what's mine. Nothing here belongs to you. That's where you're wrong." Victoria pulled out a folded document. "My brother left a will. Everything he owned, including certain debts owed to him, now belongs to me." "What debts?" Victoria's eyes glittered. "Your husband owes the Sloane estate $3,000, a loan Victor made years ago, with interest." "That's a lie." "Is it?" Victoria handed the document to Joe. "Check the signature yourself." Clara watched Joe's face as he read, watched hope crumble into horror. "This is my signature," he said hoarsely. "But I don't remember. The loan was made 12 years ago. You used it to buy this land. My brother was very patient about repayment." Victoria's voice dripped false sympathy. "But I'm afraid I can't be so generous. You have 60 days to pay in full, or the territorial court will seize your property. We don't have $3,000. "Then I suggest you find it." Victoria turned to leave. 60 days, Mr. Brennan. I'll be in touch." She climbed back into her wagon and drove away, leaving devastation in her wake. Clara grabbed the document from Joe's shaking hands. The numbers swam before her eyes. $3,000, plus 12 years of interest. More money than they'd see in a lifetime.
I don't remember this, Joe said. Clara, I swear, I don't remember signing anything. When was this dated? He looked. 1866, right before I bought the ranch. Right before you married Abigail. Joe's face went white. You think Sloane forged it? I think Sloane was planning this for years. A backup plan, in case everything else failed. Clara's mind raced. He knew he might not live forever. He made sure his sister would carry on his work. But how do we prove it's a forgery? We find witnesses, bank records, anything that shows you never received that money. That was 12 years ago. Records get lost. People forget. Then we make them remember. Joe grabbed her hands. Clara, you're 7 months pregnant. You can't be riding all over the territory. I'm not going anywhere. You are. What? Go to Helena. Find the original bank records. Talk to anyone who knew Sloane in '66. Clara squeezed his hands. I'll stay here with the children. Caleb's nearly a man now. He can help me run things. I won't leave you alone. Not with that woman out there. I won't be alone. I'll have Ruth. I'll have the children. And I'll have this. She pressed his hand to her rounded belly. Nothing's going to happen to us, Joe. I promise. He wanted to argue. She could see it in every line of his body. But he also knew she was right. 1 week, he said finally. If I don't find anything in 1 week, I'm coming home. Then you'd better find something fast. He kissed her, hard and desperate, then went inside to say goodbye to the children. The first 3 days passed slowly. Clara kept busy, cooking, cleaning, helping Caleb with the endless ranch work. She tried not to think about the document, tried not to count the days, tried not to wonder if they were about to lose everything all over again. On the 4th day, Victoria Sloane came back. She didn't come alone this time. 3 men rode with her, rough, hard-eyed, the kind of men who did dirty work for money. Clara met them on the porch, Caleb beside her with his father's rifle. Mrs. Brennan, Victoria's smile was pure poison. I heard your husband left for Helena. How unfortunate. What do you want? I've been thinking about our arrangement. 60 days seems so lengthy. I've decided to shorten it. You can't do that. I can do whatever I want. My brother owned this territory. Now I do. Victoria leaned forward. 30 days, Mrs. Brennan. You have 30 days to pay, or my men will remove you by force. That's illegal. Sue me. Victoria laughed. Oh, wait. You can't afford a lawyer either. Caleb raised the rifle. Get off our land. Victoria's eyes flickered with surprise. The boy has spirit. How charming. I won't tell you again. One of the men moved toward Caleb. Clara stepped in front of him. Touch my son, and I'll kill you myself. The man stopped. Something in Clara's eyes must have convinced him she meant it. Victoria studied her for a long moment. You're not what I expected, Mrs. Brennan. My brother said you were nothing. A $40 whore he could break with one hand. Your brother is dead. He was wrong about a lot of things. Perhaps. Victoria gathered her reins. 30 days. I suggest you use them wisely. She rode away. Clara stood on the porch until the dust settled, her whole body shaking. Ma? Caleb's voice was small, young. What are we going to do? Clara put her arm around him. When had he started calling her Ma? We're going to fight, she said. Same as always. That night, Clara sat by the fire, trying to think. The document was sophisticated. If it was a forgery, it was a masterful one. Proving it false would be nearly impossible without the original bank records. Unless... She sat up straight. Abigail. If Sloane had manipulated the loan, Abigail might have known about it. She was his obsession. He would have wanted to control her husband, control everything around her. The letters Caleb had found, the ones Abigail burned. There might be more. Caleb. The boy looked up from his whittling. Your mother, did she have a hiding place? Somewhere she kept private things? Caleb frowned. There's a loose board in the bedroom closet. She used to hide Christmas presents there. Clara was up the stairs before he finished speaking. The closet was small and dark. Clara felt along the floorboards until she found it, a section that moved when she pressed. She pulled it up. Inside was a tin box. Her hand shook as she opened it. Letters, dozens of them, yellow with age, and underneath, a single document, folded small. Clara read it by candlelight. Then she read it again. It was a confession, written in Victor Sloane's own hand, dated 1866. A confession to forging Joseph Brennan's signature on a loan document. A confession to planning, even then, to destroy the man who had stolen Abigail from him. Why would he write this? Clara whispered. Then she understood. He had given it to Abigail. A threat. A reminder that he could take everything from her husband whenever he chose. A chain to keep her bound to his obsession. And Abigail had kept it, hidden it, saved it, for this moment. Thank you, Clara whispered to the empty room. Thank you, Abigail. She sent a rider to Helena that same night. Joe came home 5 days later, his face gray with exhaustion and defeat. I couldn't find anything, he said. The bank records from '66 were destroyed in a fire. No one remembers. Clara handed him the confession. He read it once, twice. Then he sat down hard like his legs had given out. Abigail? She knew. She kept this all those years, waiting for the right moment. She saved us. Joe's voice cracked. Even now, even dead, she's still saving us. Clara knelt beside him. She loved you, Joe. She loved all of you. That's why she hid this, so that someday, when you needed it most, it would be there. He pulled her close, tears streaming down his face. I don't deserve this. Any of it. You deserve everything. We all do. They took the confession to the territorial court the next morning. Victoria Sloane was waiting, flanked by lawyers, confident in her victory. That confidence shattered when the judge read the confession aloud. This document clearly establishes that the loan agreement was fraudulently created, the judge declared. The claim against the Brennan property is hereby dismissed. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into the Sloane estate for ongoing criminal activity. Victoria's face went white. This is outrageous. That document is obviously forged. The handwriting has been verified by 3 independent experts. It matches Victor Sloane's known correspondence exactly. The judge banged his gavel. Case dismissed. Clara watched Victoria being escorted from the courtroom, screaming threats, promising revenge, sounding exactly like her brother in his final moments. Some people never learn, she thought. Some chains never break. But hers had. Finally. Completely. Forever. The wedding was held on the first day of summer. The whole territory came. Ranchers and their wives, merchants from town, the federal marshals who had helped them survive. Ruth Kincaid cried through the entire ceremony. Doc Hayes, the old physician who had delivered all 3 Brennan children, gave Clara away since she had no family of her own. No, that wasn't true anymore. She had Caleb, standing tall beside his father as best man. She had Sadie scattering wildflowers down the aisle. She had Ezra, clutching the ring like his life depended on it. She had Joe waiting at the altar with tears in his eyes, and love written across every line of his weathered face. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began. Clara barely heard the words. She was too busy looking at the family she had built, the family that had chosen her as surely as she had chosen them. When Joe said, "I do," his voice rang through the church like a bell. When Clara said, "I do," she felt every broken piece of herself finally click into place. "I now pronounce you man and wife." Joe kissed her. The congregation cheered. Ezra tugged at her skirt, asking if this meant he could have cake now. And Clara laughed, a real laugh, full and free, because she had finally found what she'd spent 18 years searching for. She had found home. The baby came in October, just as the leaves began to turn. Clara's labor lasted 12 hours. Joe refused to leave her side, even when Doc Hayes suggested he wait outside. "I wasn't there when Abigail died," Joe said through gritted teeth. "I will be here for every second of this." "Joe, if something goes wrong—" "Nothing is going to go wrong." He gripped Clara's hand. "You hear me? Nothing." Clara screamed through the pain, pushed when they told her to push, prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. And then, a cry. Small, fierce, perfect. "It's a girl," Doc Hayes announced, placing the squalling bundle on Clara's chest. Clara looked down at her daughter, red-faced, furious, already fighting, and burst into tears. "She's beautiful," Joe whispered. His hands were shaking as he touched the baby's tiny fingers.
Clara, she's so beautiful. She looks like you. God help her then.
Clara laughed through her tears.
What should we name her?
Joe was quiet for a moment. Then, Hope. I'd like to name her Hope, if that's all right. Clara thought about everything they'd survived. The $40, the fire, Sloane, Victoria, all the darkness that had tried to swallow them whole. "Hope," she said. "It's perfect." The children crowded in to meet their new sister. Ezra was fascinated by her tiny toes. Sadie immediately started planning all the things she would teach her. Even Caleb, who had been nervous about the baby, melted when Hope wrapped her fingers around his thumb. "She's strong," he said. "Like you, Ma." Clara's heart swelled. "Like all of us." That night, after the children were asleep and Doc Hayes had gone home, Clara sat by the window with Hope in her arms. Joe sat beside her, one arm around his wife, one hand resting on their daughter's back. "1 year ago," Clara said quietly, "I was property. I had nothing. Nobody. And now? Now I have everything." She looked at him, this man who had given her back her humanity, her hope, her heart. "How did we get so lucky?" "Wasn't luck," Joe kissed her forehead. "It was choice. Every single day we chose each other, chose to fight, chose to believe it could be better. And now? Now we keep choosing, for the rest of our lives." Hope stirred in Clara's arms, making those small, perfect baby sounds. Outside, the first frost was settling over the Wyoming hills. Winter was coming again. But this time, Clara wasn't afraid. Spring came early that year. The ranch had never looked better. The new barn was finished, bigger and stronger than before. The cattle herd had doubled. The garden Clara had planted was already showing signs of life. But the best part was the mornings. Clara would wake to the sound of Joe building up the fire. She would nurse Hope while Sadie made breakfast and Caleb helped Ezra with his letters. They would eat together, all 6 of them, talking and laughing and arguing about nothing important. Like a family. A real family. One morning in April, a stranger rode up to the house. Clara tensed immediately. Old fears die hard. But Joe put a hand on her arm. "It's all right. I know him." The stranger was a lawyer from Helena. He carried a leather satchel and an expression of barely contained excitement. "Mr. Brennan, Mrs. Brennan, I have news." They sat in the kitchen while he explained. Victoria Sloane had been convicted of fraud and conspiracy. The Sloane estate, all of it, had been seized by the territorial government. "And here's where it gets interesting," the lawyer said. "The court has decided to distribute the seized assets to Victor Sloane's victims. You're at the top of the list." Clara's heart stopped.
What does that mean?
"It means the Sloane Ranch, all 5,000 acres of it, now belongs to you." Silence. Complete, stunned silence. "That can't be right," Joe finally said. "It's all here." The lawyer spread documents across the table. "Land deeds, water rights, livestock holdings. Everything Victor Sloane spent his life stealing is now legally yours." Clara looked at Joe. He looked back at her. "We don't want it," Clara said. The lawyer blinked. "I'm sorry?" "We don't want his land. We don't want anything that belonged to that monster." "But, Mrs. Brennan, this is a fortune." "I don't care." Clara's voice was firm. "That land is soaked in blood. Every acre represents someone who suffered, someone who lost everything. We won't profit from that." Joe nodded slowly. "She's right. Give it to the families he destroyed. Divide it up among everyone who lost land to his schemes." "All of it?" "All of it." The lawyer stared at them like they'd lost their minds. "Do you understand what you're giving up?" "We understand perfectly." Joe took Clara's hand. "We have everything we need right here." When the lawyer finally left, still shaking his head in disbelief, Clara turned to Joe. "Did we just give away a fortune?" "Yep." "Are you sorry?" "Not for 1 second." He pulled her close. "That money was cursed. I won't have it touching our family." "People will think we're crazy." "Let them," Joe smiled. "We know the truth, and that's enough." 5 years passed like water over stones, smoothing the rough edges, deepening the channels, making everything stronger. Caleb grew into a man. At 17, he was taller than his father, with the same quiet strength and stubborn jaw. He ran the ranch alongside Joe, and there was already talk in town about the Brennan boy who turned down a job with the railroad to stay with his family. "Don't you want to see the world?" Clara asked him once. "I've seen enough of the world," he said. "This is where I belong." Sadie blossomed into a young woman with her mother's serious eyes and Clara's fierce heart. She taught school in town 3 days a week and spent the rest of her time helping Clara with the younger children. Children, plural, because Hope wasn't the last. 2 years after Hope came Samuel, named for Joe's father, the mean old cuss who had somehow raised a good man despite himself. Sam was quiet and thoughtful, more interested in books than horses, already reading at 5 years old. And then, just last spring, came the twins, Rebecca and Ruth, named for the women who had helped save them all. They were 10 months old now, crawling everywhere, getting into everything, filling the house with chaos and laughter. "6 children," Joe said one evening, watching Clara wrestle the twins into their nightgowns. "When I bought you for $40, I did not expect 6 children." "Regret it?" Not for 1 single second. Clara looked around the room, at Caleb helping Ezra with his arithmetic, at Sadie reading to Hope and Sam, at the twins finally settling in their cradles. "Neither do I," she said. That night, after everyone was asleep, Clara slipped outside to stand on the porch. The Wyoming sky stretched endless above her, thick with stars. The air smelled like spring, new grass, melting snow, possibility. In the distance, she could hear the cattle settling for the night. Joe came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "Can't sleep?"
Just thinking.
"About what?"
About how far we've come.
Clara leaned back against him. "That girl who climbed into your wagon 6 years ago? She couldn't have imagined this. Any of it. That man who paid $40 for a stranger couldn't have imagined it either. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come to town that day? If my uncle had sold me to someone else?" Joe was quiet for a moment. "I don't wonder. I know."
How?
"Because I would have found you anyway. Somehow. Some way." He turned her to face him. "You were always meant to be here, Clara. I truly believe that. Every road you walked, every hardship you survived, it was all leading you home." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "When did you get so poetic?" "Somewhere between child 4 and child 6, he grinned. "Sleep deprivation does strange things to a man." She laughed and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of all the love she'd never thought she'd find.
Thank you,
she whispered. "For what?"
for seeing me. That day in town, when I was just a girl with nothing to her name. You saw something worth saving.
"I saw everything." Joe touched her face. "I still do." They stood together in the starlight, this man and woman who had built a life from the ashes of their pasts. Behind them, the house stood warm and solid, filled with children, with love, with all the hopes they'd almost lost. Ahead of them, the future stretched endless and bright. And in Clara's heart, a truth she would carry forever. She had been sold for $40. She had been worth so much more. But the price didn't matter. What mattered was this. She had been lost, and now she was found. She had been broken, and now she was whole. She had been alone, and now she had a family so big, so loud, so perfectly imperfect that some days she could barely breathe for the joy of it. $40. That was what the world thought she was worth. But Clara May Brennan knew the truth. She was priceless. And she was finally, completely, irreversibly home.